in a Global Context Student Live. Today we'll be discussing the international repercussions of Black Lives Matter, intersections of race and police brutality, and student initiatives to combat institutionalized racism in local university contexts across the globe. We have two discussion leaders for today, Zaria Jeffries, reporter for Advanced Media New York and graduate student in journalism at Syracuse University, and Kelly Carino, PhD in communication at University of Brasilia, researcher of race relations within the field of journalism, and professor of communication faculty at University of Brasilia. My name is Emily Burkhardt, and I'm a peer advisor for Tulane's Office of Study Abroad, which coordinates the Global Perspective Series for Fall 2020. This programming series will center around important topics in our world discussed in a global context. Each discussion aims to engage the Tulane and international community and contemplate new ways to imagine the world and our place within it. As this discussion is student-driven, we encourage all of you to participate in this discussion and engage in a meaningful way. In order to do this, you can ask questions by either unmuting yourself or typing in the chat box. While this conversation will be primarily in English, feel free to speak in Spanish, Portuguese, French, or Chinese, as we have people listening who will do their best to translate if needed. We want everyone to feel welcome. We would also like to establish a few ground rules. The first being take space, make space. We want everyone to share their thoughts, but also want to be mindful of others if you're speaking a lot, and make space for them to share their opinions as well. Second, we encourage you to challenge the idea, not the person. You may disagree with a statement that someone shares, however, that doesn't mean we don't respect that person. Finally, take the concepts but not the contents. People may be sharing personal information here today that they don't want shared outside of this group. So instead, take the lessons learned from hearing about those experiences. Thank you all for joining us today, and I'm now going to turn it over to Annie Gibson, Director of the Office of Study Abroad, with a brief message before we get started.
Hi, everyone. We are so happy to have you here today. I just wanted to take a moment to say that we have quite a few students that are joining us from Brazil in the group, and we are really excited to have them here. And so this is just a special reminder of the privilege of having this conversation mostly in English. And I just wanted to take a few minutes at the beginning to make sure that all of our Brazilian students feel that they can speak in Portuguese. So if you wouldn't, I'm just going to take 1 minute to address those students with this introduction before turning it over to the moderator. Oi, galera, tudo bem? Eu fico muito feliz de ter vocês aqui com a gente. É muito bom ter essa troca entre cultura para falar desse assunto tão importante. E é verdade que a conversa em geral, a discussão em geral vai ser em inglês, mas eu quero que vocês sintam à vontade de se expressar na maneira melhor possível. Então, fique à vontade de fazer perguntas, de entrar na discussão em português, que eu vou estar aqui para traduzir. E estamos aqui para você, tá bom? Ok. Agora eu vou para Kelly. So now I'm going to turn it over to the moderators to begin the discussion.
Hey y'all, good afternoon. I'm so happy this invitation. Thank you so much, Annie, to invite me to talk to everybody now in this afternoon, mainly in this day because the protest against racism recruited in the last days. After this last episode, the guy suffered 7 guns in his back, and now have many protests in US. I hope everybody is okay. So because I know about the Lara hurricane, everybody's okay, it's safe. Because in Brazil, in the last news, I watched about the Laura hurricane, and I'm so worried about my friends from New Orleans because I know this time it's having many hurricanes and the other natural phenomena. So I'd like to start to introduce me. I'm a journalist and I have opportunity to be a visiting scholar at Tulane University in 2015 and 2016. And that time I came to make my research about genocide Black people, mainly the genocide the youth Black in Brazil and US. I came to make my research to study these phenomena in two big countries. Two big countries in the past have Black population influence because have this country had the experience to have a Black diaspora. In this time, I came to make no knowledge and have access to research about racism in the US. And I came to make a change between US and Brazil. And when I returned after the visiting scholar at Tulane University, I came to do, I finished my PhD, and now I am professor in Brasilia University. And mainly this year, after the increase the Black Lives Matter USA, many people is searched me about to talk about this protest, talk about the racism in Brazil and US. And when they invite me, I accepted this invitation because I think it's a good opportunity, mainly the American students, to know more information about the racism in Brazil, about our reality, about what we have common process in this context global about Black Lives Matter. So I am so happy this invitation. So my research is about race relations, journalism, communication. I studied about intersectionality too. And so I am open to ask us about Brazil, West, and the other countries if I can to answer about the race and racism. So thank you so much for this invitation, and I am open to answer all these participants in this meeting. Thank you.
All right, I guess it's my turn. My name is Zaria, as they have already said, and I am a Tulane alumni now, so that's great. I think I graduated 2019. I'm majoring in journalism right now at Syracuse University, and I'm also a reporter at the Post Standard, which is another subsect of advanced media, because there's many different chapters. But I'm really glad to be here today to talk about something that I'm very passionate about. So yeah, I'm here to answer anybody's questions. I've dealt with PWIs and the like, and I'm really interested in seeing what the global context of Black Lives Matter has, what effect it has on us. Any other questions? Are you guys in the chat box at all? Anybody?
I can start with a question. I wanted to know what the first step for a university student looking to get more involved in the fight against institutionalized racism on their campuses, especially at a PWI. I know students are often overwhelmed by the problem and are not sure where to start with anti-racist actions. So I was wondering what you both thought of that question.
Kelly, I can go last after you.
I start to answer.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, Annie, I would like you help me to.
Então, a pergunta tem a ver com como é para os estudantes no Brasil se organizar contra o racismo. Qual é o contexto de organização quanto a respeito desse tema no Brasil? O que estão fazendo em termos de organização na universidade?
So in Brazil, this movement is recently. started the strong way in 2003 when the university started to have affirmative politics. Before 2003, we didn't have affirmative politics at the universities in Brazil. So after these politics increase the Black students at the university, mainly the public university, because the public university have a strong representation in Brazil. And since this presence with Black students at the university, the Black students started to talk about racism, to talk about our reality, mainly violence, mainly inequality, because I don't know if you know, the Brazil is the last country to the abolition. No? All the American, our history said me the last country to make abolition, and we don't have public politics to support the Black population, mainly the 20th century, and in 21st century started affirmative politics. And these facts have a strong impact the Black persons in Brazil, because we don't have support. We don't until now we don't have the worst socio-economic indicators. And in the last 20 years old, we make a strong organization, the students against the racism. So, and now I have small groups like Black students of the university to talk about it in courses, seminaries, and making sometimes asked to make regulations to have good conditions. The Black students have a good life at the university and our society. But I think I have a more organization mainly in the university, because in the secondary and the basic students, we don't have expressive movements at the school. Not specific the race. We have other movements, but not specific race in Brazil. And we have other problem. Many students, mainly Black students, don't give up the school, because don't have money to support the school and to continue the basic school and the secondary school. It's a terrible reality, because these persons don't have a good qualification, and after these people become the employers in Brazil. So until now, we don't have a strong intersectionality politics. The Black movement now try to build the intersectionality politics to mainly the students, the basic school and the secondary school, to change this reality, and maybe at the future we can to have a strong movement, the students, Black students in the fundamental school and the secondary school.
So, Kelly, as a part of the curriculum there, can you tell me what you guys are reading or who you guys are reading as a form of education for socioeconomic and race classes?
Uh,
Kelly, quais são alguns dos textos das pessoas mais importantes para ler a respeito de temas de raça e movimentos sociais no contexto brasileiro? Quais são os nomes?
so we have important researches and authors in Brazil, but because of the structural racism, this actually it's not know about everyone. It's if you today you arrive in the school in Brazil and show Lélia Gonzalez, many students never listen about her, never listen about Lélia Gonzalez. Lélia Gonzalez is a famous researcher in Brazil about racism, about intersectionality, and she died in 1994, but she was a professor at the PUC, a famous private university in Brazil. And Lélia Gonzalez is a good name to read about racism in Brazil. Abdias do Nascimento is other famous person to talk about racism. Abdias do Nascimento was senator, artist, politic. It's a famous guy about the racism in Brazil. Other guy nowadays we have Silvio de Almeida. Silvio de Almeida, I think he is in the U.S. now. I think he now students. He's post undergraduate, post PhD. I think so. He wrote about the structural racism in Brazil. Silvio de Almeida. This a guy almost 45 years old. And this man nowadays talk about the structural racism in Brazil. So, Djamila Ribeiro, I don't know if you know about Djamila Ribeiro. She is a philosophy in Brazil. Djamila, D-J-A-M-E-L-I-A. Djamila Ribeiro, it's a famous woman. I think she has 40 years old, and a famous woman to talk about racism, to talk about the Black human feminist. I guess I this 4 days to the past and strong past, Abdias and Lélia. And nowadays, Sueli Carneiro, it's other, Djamila Ribeiro, Silvio de Almeida. We have many people to talk about it in Brazil.
I'm gonna just input that from Beth's question in the chat. We'll try to put together some resources from some of these writers, these Brazilian authors of race, and we'll put them on our background resources page for this module. So I'll have Kelly work with me to send me a few, and we'll try to find some in both Portuguese and in English. I also just want to say que eu vejo mais brasileiros entrando. Vocês podem ficar à vontade de fazer perguntas em português que eu vou traduzir.
So I also wanted to know, the Black Lives Matter movement in the U.S. Kind of started with Black women, and a lot of Black women can be seen on the front lines doing organizational work. And from the list of people that you said just now, it seemed like a lot of women were on that. Is it the same in Brazil? Are Black women some of the main people a part?
Yes, the same. Nowadays, Zafira, it's so strong, the presence of the Black woman in this movement, mainly the movement Black Lives Matter. There are many reasons. The first, we are the persons suffer the worst social indicators. No, we have problems to have a good job with the law, with the access the education, health. So we in Brazil we have the worst indicators. No, today the press in Brazil is talking about the Atlas da Violência, violence of Atlas, and the mainly person died in 2012 because the murder and the guns. They are persons, black youth and women. So black women died. Black women died by 2 hours. One black woman died in Brazil. So these indicators are the 2012 in Brazil. So this reality make the black youth, black woman act against the reality, no? And we have many women in organization like mothers have your children died by police in Brazil. We have a movement like Mães de Manguinhos in Rio de Janeiro. Manguinhos, it's a famous Islam, no, favela, Annie?
Mm-hmm.
It's a famous Islam in Brazil, Mães de Manguinhos, because these mothers had her children died by policy or by drugs of trafficking. We have women at these periferias. I don't know periferias in English. What say?
Can you say that again?
Periferia.
The outskirts or the marginal neighborhoods.
In marginal neighborhoods, yes. We have a strong presence of the mothers, the marginal neighborhoods, to fight against this reality and try to build public policies to help her families, her children, her neighborhoods. And we have a strong presence of the Black Yuma at the university, at the academy, to study about racism, to study about racism structural, violence, brutality policy. So many topics relationship with this racism and race in Brazil.
I want to just say, I saw that Mary had her hand up. Mary, would you like to say something?
Yes, I'm an alum of Newcomb and currently living on the Gulf Coast. And first of all, I'd like to thank Tulane for putting on this wonderful program. But can you tell me what the ratio of Black students to white students is at Tulane University, and a little bit more about how Black Lives Matter on campus and if there's any outreach other than what you're doing right now?
I'd love if a student could answer that rather than myself. So any students at Tulane want to jump in?
I have some input I can share, Annie, in that a few years ago, the university made a commitment to having more inclusivity at the university. And so since they've made that commitment, which was probably about 4 years ago, the numbers have gone up. But currently the numbers are, it's not as high as it sounds. I think it's almost 30% of the population is students of color, and they've also included in that international students, which is a little bit deceptive. So Tulane is definitely working on it, but we are not as far as we need to go, and there is pretty much a commitment to keep that number going up for students of color in general. And they don't break it down below that, but I know that they're very concerned about Black students in particular.
And what about faculty? Black minority faculty.
They've admitted as part of that initiative that the inclusivity is also at the faculty level because it's such an important part of making those students feel comfortable at the university, but I don't know data on that.
Thank you.
And I want to just put a call out for Tulane students. I'd love to hear your perspective on this. So jump in.
Well, what's more specific? Like, is the question like, what is the climate around what's going on right now on the Tulane campus?
Yes, for Black Lives Matter, right.
Well, it's an interesting question. First of all, I know that the percentage of specifically Black students at Tulane is in the single digits. If I'm not mistaken, it's something like 3 or 4%. So really small. The numbers are deceptive, if not like manipulative, in that, yeah, like international students are not representative of, diversity in the sense of race necessarily. As far as the campus culture, again, this is something that I'd love to hear other people as well. I think that there are a lot of organizations on campus that are pushing for a lot of sensible demands of the administration. I can think of the Legrio group of Black women, I think, which is last fall. And I know TBSU has recently put in an extensive list of demands addressing a wide variety of issues of racism, anti-Blackness on Tulane's campus. So that's definitely there. Whether or not the majority of the campus is in the mindset to actually take some of that stuff seriously, I think is an entirely different question. But I think that there's plenty of students on campus that are vocal and are organizing and working to try and hold the administration accountable. But yeah, I'd love to hear from other people too. I also do have a question that I wanted to ask kind of about Brazil, but I don't want to take away from this discussion either. So just put my hand up, I guess.
Is there any other Tulane student that wants to talk a little bit about the climate at Tulane before we move on to the next question?
Hi, I'm Zoe. I think over the summer, especially like when lots of things were happening with the Black Lives Matter movement, we saw lots of organizations and departments on campus releasing statements in support of the Black Lives Matter movement and in support of different like initiatives going on. But what we didn't see though was how organizations and departments were going to be implementing this and like changing their culture. So that's kind of what we're waiting on, I think. I know towards the end of summer, there were a few CEA facilitations put on for like how to be an anti-racist student org leader, which I thought were super helpful. And like now that school's kind of starting back up, like I definitely plan to try to implement in the clubs that I'm involved in, but also those CA facilitations didn't have as high of attendance as like you would have thought, considering how much posting we saw going on from students and organizations on campus.
I want to ask if any of the programs that they have implemented, are any of them mandatory or required, anything like that?
No, they were just kind of optional. And I know there's like a required like race and inclusion credit for graduation, but that's subjective.
The only thing that is required, I was an orientation leader this year, and so there's a program called the Ripple Effect, which talks about diversity and inclusion on college campuses and pointing out microaggressions and like calling people in versus calling people out, and also just being an active bystander. And so all freshmen are required to attend that. But that is a 1 hour, like an hour and a half discussion that is required for like technically all 4 of your years here.
Is it fine if I say something? I know I don't have my picture on the screen, but I just wanted, to say something. I just graduated from Tulane in May of this year. But for me, just like throughout my 4 years, I think it's just understanding like how Black Lives Matter for a lot of students did not start like in 2015 or start with Mizzou or even start with the Black Lives Matter uprisings. It's like at Tulane, this has been a part of our history since Black students have been allowed, I guess you can say, in university. So it's a hard thing when like now Tulane is wanting to talk about diversity and inclusion when Black students since their time, like in the 1960s after university, have been fighting for like anti-racist, I guess you could say, policies. It's not like we're just fighting for reform. We're fighting for, and not fighting to be accepted. We're fighting for ways to survive within the system. And I think that's the biggest thing. You just can't, I feel like with Tulane, it goes beyond just saying like, oh, we want more Black and brown students, but like, what are you doing to make that accessible for students while they're there? What are you doing as far as in terms of tuition, in terms of reparations? That's another big thing, is just understanding the historical legacy of living and going to school on a plantation, you know, going to school where enslaved people die, you know, on the property, and just understanding the segregation that is still, you know, taking place as far as like with the custodial workers or the cafeteria workers, right? Like, what does that mean in a time of COVID-19? Like, is hazard pay being given to these workers? Is hazard pay being given to resident advisors? So it's all about challenging the institution to like really look at all levels and not just like one isolated thing as far as like, let's have a program here, or let's talk about diversity. No, let's talk about anti-racism, you know, especially in a city like New Orleans.
All of that. Agreed. I guess
Alec had that question burning in his head about Brazil. Maybe we could ask that question too.
Yeah, I mean, so I think something like when I saw this the lecture, something that, or like the title of this lecture, the thing that I was thinking was how, although racism obviously extends beyond boundaries, like the country boundaries, I think how it manifests can be slightly different. How it's treated, how people discuss it in different countries is different. Just how it acts, and so I'm specifically having spent a semester in Brazil, thinking about my time there, and how you can't take your understanding of race, structural racism, individual racism in the American context and just plant yourself in Brazil and not change the way that you think about it. And so my question, I suppose, is how can we extend and unify a kind of Black Lives Matter movement and a movement against an anti-racist movement globally that accounts for differences in the lived experience of racism in different countries?
I think
so Zaria, can you answer after I answer?
Please. Go ahead. Oh, you're talking about me. I think to create a unified approach to Black Lives Matter that can encompass all Black lives, literally, is kind of hard to do when there are so many other entities trying to co-opt the movement. And while the intersectionality of the movement is great, I think it becomes hard to have something that is solid and that can't be, like, ideally I would want something to happen or a phrase to come about that can't be turned into a Blue Lives Matter or All Lives Matter. I want it, like, you won't even be able to substitute anything to change the meaning of our movement. And I think if we can get something that's unified in that context, as hard as that looks in the US period, going global with it would be a lot easier if we could get it down pat.
Alec, the Brazilian reality, it's so complex because we have a different context in Brazil and the USA. In Brazil, it's so common that people say, We don't have racism in Brazil. Any lived in the past in Brazil, and she knows about it. It's many people say in Brazil. We in Brazil don't have racism. So my country was building about this sentence. We live in racial democracy. In Brazil, we have a racial democracy. And this sentence is the mind of the people in Brazil. So the Black movement is fighting against this sentence. And it's so common, the Black movement in Brazil say it's a myth. It's a myth because not to have racial democracy in Brazil, have a racism and a strong racism. But it's so common, our elite and our politics nowadays, the actual president say we are equal. We are persons. We don't have racism in Brazil. So I think so. In my country, Brazil, to unify a global unity like Black Lives Matter, first we can to move this idea we have racism in Brazil. It's so strong nowadays. Only Black people's feelings the racism effects in the routine, because have a brutality policy, we have the worst indicators, we don't have a good representation of mass media, so we have a less life expectancy because we have problems with health, diabetes, high pressure, or other issues, relationships they have. So first, we need to solve our problems, the racism, after to think about to unify in the Black Lives Matter or a global movement, because we have strong problems in Brazil until now.
Kelly, what do you think about the hashtag of Black Lives Matter becoming something that is able to be commodified, and we see brands putting the tag onto a lot of their websites, kind of trying to put out a statement to cover their bases, what it feels like? Do you see, like, what impact do you see of that in Brazil, if any?
So when I answer about this, the mothers, it's so important because this hashtag have possibility to visibility all the society in Brazil, all the Brazilian society about this reality. Now, I think 1 or 2 weeks before George Floyd died in USA, we have a strong attack from the policy in the marginalization neighborhood at Rio de Janeiro, in Rio de Janeiro, and the guy, it's a teenager, João Miguel, his name. This a teenager. He was 14 years old. He was in his house with other brothers, families, and the gun attacked this boy, and he died in his house. So during the pandemic, during the isolation, so this is a phenomenon happen every day in Brazil. Every day, many Black teenagers, Black boys died during the space to they are to go. They going to school going to work. So so when use this hashtag, this sentence, Black Lives Matter, it's the way to have a visibility, because the structural racism in Brazil, not possibility to talk about this, the open, the media, the press, the social media. Nowadays, the main space, this movement, it's the social media, Facebook, Instagram, because it don't have visibility. So it's so common in my country. The press talk about the racism in USA, because the people say only have racism in USA, only have racism in USA, not have racism in Brazil. So this is a large way to my country needs to walk to rebuilding a new way to think about the racism. And maybe in the future we have many people talk about it. It's normal in Brazil about it, because it's now the people say about it, the Black movement, the Black people, but the majority of the people don't talk about it.
Okay. I kind of want to pose the same question to members of the group and some students, if you don't mind, because I want to get the, I wrote down that the culture is trying to tell us something very different from the past, and that's the creation of a binary of racist and not racist, and that idea of being not racist has to come with some type of action, because a lot of the things people are saying and the branding that companies are putting out, it's just words a lot of the times, because when you look at who's on their board or what are their diversity policies and things like that, those things haven't changed, but they have put Black Lives Matter on their website. So in this essence, what does Black Lives Matter really mean at this point? Is it something to get Black people to your sales revenue? That's what I kind of want to hear everybody's perspective on.
Annie, help me.
Sim, então ela fez a pergunta para o grupo se aqui nos Estados Unidos ela sente que às vezes esse Black Lives Matter se usa para vender produto, para alguma organização, companhia receber apoio, ficar dentro da mídia. E então ela tem esse conflito. De um lado dela, ela se sente feliz, né, que é um momento de se mostrar, mas no outro lado essa ideia de se vender, o movimento como comodidade, e que vocês como grupo acham sobre isso? So Black Lives Matter as a commodity, what do we think about that as a group? And I also see that there's some questions coming in the chat, which we're going to get to. So I see them there. We're going to get there too.
Zaria, your country is a good country to do markets, to sell things, to sell ideas. This is the capitalism. So I agree with you. This way it's so violent, because this topic is about our lives. It's about our brothers, our sisters, our dads and mother. So I agree with you, because every day I feel when I watch more Black person died, I thought it can be me, can be my brother, can be my sister. So for us, it's so meaning this Black Lives Matter, because it's the same, this political sentence to have feelings for us to move it, to act, to change these things. So for the other side, this reality, because this sentence, it's a merchant. Have I studied merchant this sentence? So I think it's a conflict the mailing in you in USA live. And Brazil, we don't live in this situation because how I say the Black Lives Matter is so strong in the Black movement, but the open society, it's not common that people say about it. Not it's if you arrive now in my country, turn on TV and start to watch about the news. It's about today woman unfortunately died I think in Rio de Janeiro. It's the fight the gangs. Not the journalists not put these revenues in the global context for the diet the Black people, the brutality policy or the traffic the drugs, not have a contest this reality. It's only this more one more diet, one more murder in our reality. So this fact is different in USA, in Brazil. In Brazil, not have a strong commercialization about the Black Lives Matter because we don't have this reality in Brazil.
Yeah, I'd like to say something just like really quickly. Also, I have to go right after this, so I'm sorry, I don't want to like dip right up, but I have class. I was very like disheartened and shocked in one of my business classes the other day at Tulane. We were talking about marketing and someone was talking about Nike marketing Black Lives Matter. And the class only wanted to talk about like their stock practices like shot up. Like that was such a good business strategy. That was such a good, and it was just like, no humanity in it. And these are like our business leaders of America, you know, that are talking about this very difficult issue. And at the end of the day, all they wanted to talk about was the stock prices associated with it. And then I was in another class in the B school with actually someone who's in this chat. I don't want to like name them, but basically we're talking about like the economic and how like the economics shot up around like the 1800s and how that was all due to like entrepreneurs and inventors and people who are creative. And someone said like, well, we also have to talk about the context of slavery and colonialism and like the implications they had even today on the economy. And our teacher was just so dismissive. And he was like, no, like that's wrong. Like we're not going to talk about that in this class. And it was like just really, really, really shocking and disheartening to see that like firsthand that students on this university just aren't aware or don't want to know or don't want to learn or don't want to grow, just, you know, so I don't know, I just wanted to share a little firsthand experience of kind of the Tulane culture, at least for some Tulaneans, about this issue.
Thank you for that.
Going to the chat, I'm going to condense some of the questions for you so that we have time. So there's quite a few questions there that are asking about education in Brazil, specifically lower school, and then also college in terms of teaching about blackness, teaching about slavery. Have there been changes in the ways that Brazilian schools are talking about oppressed groups? Are there changes in the rhetoric of how people are discussing these topics? Então, para os falantes de português, tem várias perguntas no chat, na mensagem sobre a comunidade, a escola e como se ensina sobre raça no Brasil, no contexto do Brasil. Então, vamos falar desse assunto um pouquinho.
So, in Brazil, we have almost 55% the Black person in Brazil. Brazil is the second country have more Black population after Nigeria. So the Black population in Brazil have a strong presence of culture, you know, because you live in Brazil. It's all about samba, maracatu, carnival. So the Black population has influence in the Portuguese, our language, because we have many words from Yoruba, from Bantu. It's ethnic groups from Africa come to Brazil. Né? So but this fact it's not common to talk about the school, mainly the children. So I was a children. We don't have don't the history professors don't talk about the Yorubas, Bantus, about the African history. So in US, you have more information about it than us in Brazil, unfortunately, because you don't have history to talk about it. Only talk about the slavery. No? And now I think it have a terrible effect of the psyche, the people, because the only representation is slavery, slavery, slavery. Not have good representation for our children, no. But in the last 20 years old, after the affirmative policy, it started a movement to change the books at the children and teenagers about the good representation of the Black population in Africa. We now we have a law 10639 to this law talk about the teaching Black history and the Afro-Brazilian people in Brazil, but we have so difficult to talk about because the education university don't talk this topic is with the students to study about education in Brazil. And in Brazil, we have a strong presence, the Protestant religion. In many times, the culture, African culture, make a confusion with religion. It's demoniac, it's not good. So we have problems with this teach Africa history at the school. So, but this is a scenario. The one side we have a Black movement to ask it. It's more important to talk about the Black history to building a good representation the children and youth Black in Brazil. In the other side, we have the Protestants. It's not good because the Christianism needed to talk about them, the Afro religion. So we have this contest. But I'm an optimist. I think this generation have more positive representations than me in 1918 when I was child. I think now we have more movie, more animes, and we have more books talk about the African history.
Great. Another question is thinking about it in Brazil in terms of government. So ideologically, Trump and Bolsonaro are often compared and aligned ideologically. And what has Bolsonaro's response been to Black Lives Matter in Brazil?
So I think when I talked in the beginning, I told about the racial democracy. The Bolsonaro, this is the his line. So we don't have racism in Brazil. So we have everybody are equal. Everybody have the same opportunities, the same laws. So Bolsonaro, he has a same actuation ideological the Trump because Bolsonaro denied this movement. So if for us it's terrible because before the Bolsonaro government, we is building strong politics, specifically to race politics, to try to political economies. Equality politics to make reparation the Black population in Brazil. To 2003 until 2015, we started in first time in my country to have specifically politics to Black population. The last 40 years, mainly Bolsonaro, this politics, it's over. Health politics to Black people, education to Black people. Only this affirmative politics that universities, it's not, he came to broke because our law, judiciary, our Supreme voted in 2013, I think, it's the caucus, what's say caucus in English?
Caucus, yeah.
Caucus. It's
the quota, the quota system.
Quota system. It's favor to quotas in Brazil. It's not possible. Bolsonaro broken this politics. The only politics not possible to broke it, but other politics it's not strong. He broke it, and we have unfortunately retrocess. In 2 years, we have a strong retrocess because he don't believe there are racism in Brazil.
We're coming right at 5, so there's one question that to kind of wrap this this up. Harmony poses a really good question of what can we do to build Black transnational solidarity? What are some actions as students, as young people that we can do to move this movement forward in a global context? So I would love Kelly, Zaria, feel free to unmute yourself if you want to talk. Feel free to type it in. What ideas do we have to bring a global movement of solidarity around Black Lives Matter?
Zaria.
Like I said before, I would really like to see something like a true unified front. And with that, I think this goes back to being in the Black community, where in the US especially, there's so many other intersections of Black life that are trying to get their just due, like Black LGBTQ movement or the Black Muslim movement. So it's a lot of Black people whose extra identities go into being Black that are trying to put on the movement, and that makes the mission hard. And I think if we can unify that and find a phrase to go with that, or something we all want and can't argue about amongst ourselves, we can then present to the world a global front and our demands, is how I feel. And I think that might happen with a select group of organizations rather than like the Black Lives Matter movement. There's chapters everywhere. And I don't know if there's a lot of like specific organizing unless it's being done by organizations that don't call themselves Black Lives Matter.
If I may, and other people can chime in whether or not they think this is correct, but specifically at Tulane, I think, and just within the community in the United States, a lot of times there are people who don't believe themselves to be racist or don't believe their thoughts or actions to be racist because there is such a stigma against the word racism. And I know personally, and then from the comments of friends of mine, that a lot of times we at Tulane might have professors or students or otherwise who make racist comments or have racist actions. And I think a big thing we can do is just call them out on that, because this, we're all learning, we're all trying to do better with this. So
to you, can I ask what it is like to experience a movement where being silent isn't necessary an option anymore or a choice if you want to present yourself as not racist? Because I think the climate now is saying to be not racist is to be anti-racist, and to be anti-racist is an action. It's like you said, speaking up and not letting silence, because in silence can be misconstrued with compliance or like it's okay.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because, as you said, there's no really straightforward path as far as I can see, especially, the term of Black Lives Matter has become a commodity and become a perhaps misused statement in some ways. But holding yourself accountable and holding those in your community accountable to the best of your abilities, I think, is a great standpoint. And as other students have said, there are some movements just among the students and student groups here at Tulane who are trying to push for further change. But I would welcome the suggestions of anyone else.
Do we have any final comments here on that question?
I can comment. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'm sorry about the noise here. Yeah, so thank you, Zaria, and obrigada, Kelly. So yeah, I just wanted to speak a little bit about the solidarity question between different countries. So at least between the US and Brazil, I do believe these dialogues surrounding solidarity happen. But, well, I have to say that the US is an imperialist country. So in Brazil, people know that Jacob Blade was killed here by the police, and they will talk about it, they will protest. But in Brazil, the number of killings by the police is around, I don't know, 17 times higher, if I'm not wrong. But in the US, they don't know what is going on. They don't know who was the last person killed by the police in Brazil. So yes, these changes, they happen. They are very important, especially between people, people within these movements. So there are travels, there are meetings, but maybe the media has to catch up, and the discourse has to change. And yes, there are movements in Brazil against police terror that are as big as Black Lives Matter. So Reaja ou será morto, ou Reaja ou será morta, and Parem de nos matar is another one. So yeah, but there are big movements in Brazil too. And it's just an example of how this type of information doesn't travel to the US. And yeah, the question is why and how this communication would have to happen.
It could be something where it's not on like specific citizens. Maybe the citizens can like start the uproar, but I think to get a global reckoning, it would need to be global leaders like UN. Correct me if I'm wrong, if that's not the right organization, but I'm thinking any meeting of global leaders that have impact, this should be brought up as a global problem if anti-Blackness is a global issue.
Sorry, I would like to see that happening. I have no faith in the UN. especially because, you know, considering the global leaders that are part of the group. But yeah, I agree. It would be really nice to have a big organization that could share information and hold people accountable. That's not the UN, in my opinion.
I'll agree with you there. I would have no trust in that as well. But having something similar to that with people that we actually want as leaders and have our interests at heart might be our best bet.
I agree with you, Zaria. We need a global leader to talk about it, and the communication can be a partner in this process. But specifically in Brazil, I think we need to make more representation of the Black persons at the mass media. We have low people in the mainly in the post of leaders in the media. So we don't have a good representation, or almost like this the Black population in Brazil. So if you have opportunity to watch a TV in Brazil, maybe we can be to Germany or Ireland, because we have a white TV in Brazil. So I think I think it's many factors to change the reality, specifically the mass media, the communication. But one these factors to have increase the Black people in the communication in Brazil. And Claudia, I don't know if you agree with me, but if it one of these possibilities in Brazil.
Maria has her hand raised. Maria, would you like to ask a question or make a comment?
Yes, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a question because it was said that in Brazil, many people deny the existence of racism, and that also the media doesn't really report on racism in Brazil. So I think that maybe having more Black journalists or journalists of color maybe would be a solution. And yeah, because they can also represent the community and speak the truth. So I am wondering, how could the number of journalists of color be increased in Brazil, or what would have to happen to have more journalists of color? And maybe it's a question I would ask Kelly or also Zaria.
And I'll just say, Harmony, I see your hands up. If you want to answer that question as well, pipe in. If not, I'll get you next.
Kelly, you can go ahead. Since she was talking about Brazil, I can talk about the US after you.
Okay. Any help with me, because I don't understand good
Ela
question.
fez a pergunta se uma solução possível seria ter mais reportagem e mais repórteres afro-brasileiros, se tem algum movimento a respeito disso no Brasil.
Yes, I agree with you. I think one of these possibilities, we have more Black journalists in Brazil. So after these quotas of the university, we have more Black journalism. And nowadays it's possible to see results about these politics. But I think we have, this is the structural racism, we have a difficult to talk about the racism in the context more complex. So because it is the racial democracy. But the majority presence of the black journalists or Black people in the cinema, radio, TV, we start the movement to talk about it, and now we have more reports, news about this phenomenon in Brazil. We started to walking. It's like a baby. It started to walk, but I think in the future we have a good impact to talk the way more amplification about the racism in Brazil.
As far as having more Black journalists in the U.S., I definitely agree. In my cohort for the class of 2019-2020, I went to PWI, and for Tulane, that's the PWI. But for this cohort, it was the most Black people I had been in a classroom with. So that was odd. And I think it was their most diverse class, as a matter of fact, just in Newhouse in general. But you also learn when you're the most diverse class that what they're teaching is not going to be the most diverse way to teach it either. Just as far as, especially teaching on crime reporting, what I was taught, I had issues with. And I think there's a lot of like dog whistles that you can point out when you have journalists of color in the room, just based off decision-making, headlines that you write with thug in them, things like that, that really help when a critical thinking Black journalist is in the room.
Harmony, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I just I wanted to like kind of re-articulate my question a little bit. I wanted to dig a little deeper and kind of rephrase it, because I'm not sure if I phrased it like right in the first place. But I really appreciate Anna bringing up U.S. imperialism and the fact that I feel like a lot of the discourse generated around Black Lives Matter, you know, comes from the U.S. And like we other countries, you hear our stories, but we don't always hear theirs. So my question with Solidarity was trying to kind of pick at the root of that. And we did discuss like some solutions, institutional solutions with seeing more Black journalists of color in the media in both of our countries to really kind of bring more of these stories to light and kind of connect the two. But I also want to know, what are other areas of solidarity that can be bridged between these two countries? Is it, I don't really want to say it's just a function of like Brazilian stories not being told, although that is happening. Like, what can Black Americans do? What are ways Black Americans can show up, not just in the media and not just in the academy, to really build solidarity? Because we're seeing a world that's a lot more interconnected. So that's really where I wanted to kind of go with that question. How do we kind of, as Black Americans, recognize that we are Black and we have this solidarity, but we're also like citizens of an empire? And like, I just kind of want to dig into that a little bit to see if y'all had any more thoughts on things.
I do. Can I just say something really? Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Zaria, I'll be very fast. I would say that Americans, and specifically Black Americans, can do the revolution. It's very difficult to think about small acts. They do help, but they will not break an entire system built around the oppression of Black people, brown people, LGBTQ plus people, and so on. So yes, starting by dumping Trump would be really good, because it interferes with the whole world, with Latin America especially. So there are many things that Americans can do and like should be really doing, because as I said, it really impacts the whole world, especially Latin America. What happens in the US can, yes, can mess things in other countries in a major way. So right now, Bolsonaro is trying to, not trying, he's actually implementing a policy to allow people to buy more guns, for example, which is an immense tragedy. And he's doing that because he has the blessing of Trump and probably the guns companies and things like that. But anyway, it's all connected. Sorry.
Harmony, I wanted to ask you what, before anybody else answered the question, what was your definition of solidarity? Like, what does that look like? Or would it look like?
I don't necessarily have like a super refined definition, but when I think of solidarity, I think of just simply mutual support, not in a way that's kind of like, not in like a charitable kind of way, but more of a, okay, we're in this together. Recognition, really, because I also don't know like if many Black Americans know that Brazil is one of the blackest countries in the world, or know or are familiar with international Blackness at all. So I think I define solidarity as simply just kind of mutual support.
Okay.
And what does it look to do that as, being an imperialist country? So
I think since we don't know, we can't support. And if most of us aren't even aware of things that are anti-Black happening all over the world, it's kind of hard for us to come out of our own situation and say, this is happening a lot worse and a lot more often than it is here, and they're not even getting half the attention.
I believe we have solidarity between us Black people from diaspora. I think our challenge is about the whiteness and the racism, like hierarchy between races. Biologically, everybody know it's not have difference between the human being. But with a social context, the racism have until now big impacts. So I think our challenge, the academic or the press, but the society, mainly in these countries, we have a diaspora Black. We abolition the racism and the hierarchy. In Brazil, we have a strong challenge because the Black people now starting to talk to have a Black conscience. So and the white people not have don't want to talk about the racism because have many privileges in Brazil. So we have a strong challenge to try to change the mind of the white people. The racism is not good, and we need to change this reality because it's not good for you, because you need to build a house with safe security, many things to protect the white people, and the Black people die every day. So I don't know if it's possible now to abolition to racism. In my class, when I teach my students, I told the colonization was 5th century. The humanity building for 3 centuries about the racism theories to justify the oppression, And now we have 70 years old to rebuild the other way to think about the racism. So if we think in relation to time, 60 years old, it's a small time if compared to 3 centuries now about this, the strong construction theory fundamentals of the racism. So I think we have a long way to deconstruct about the racism.
Everyone, we're coming up at an hour and a half, so we've gone a little bit over, but this is such an important conversation. I wanted to keep it going. I'd like to thank Zaria and Kelly both for helping lead this discussion, and thank all of you for being with us here today to talk about this. And the conversation doesn't end here. A couple of things that I would love. One, if you have any resources, Kelly named a few resources, but anyone on the call, if you have some resources that you would like to share with this group who's interested in thinking about solidarity, please do. You can email my office, osa@tulane.edu. And we're also going to be, so we'll collect those and we'll put them on our Global Perspectives website so that you all can continue to read on these topics. We'll also come up with some ways where you guys can continue to connect if you want to continue a discussion. So whether it's through a WhatsApp group or a GroupMe, if you want to keep talking and meeting people, and because this is just the beginning, okay? So again, I want to thank you. Obrigada a todo mundo que veio aqui para falar com a gente, os brasileiros aqui presentes, muito obrigada. A sua perspectiva, a vontade de participar, fazer parte, fazer perguntas. Eu fico muito feliz de ter vocês aqui. E é só o começo, por favor, convide seus amigos para entrar em contato com a gente, para a gente continuar a bater um papo sobre esse assunto tão importante, tá bom? So again, thank you, everyone. We're going to close it out. Does anyone have any final comments for us? Zaria, Kelly, do you want to close it out for us here?
Breonna Taylor's killers still have not been, but thank you guys for having me. I really enjoyed it. And Annie, let me know if you're doing something like this again, because I had a lot of fun.
So I'd like to glad Elena, Rebecca Tencio, Ana Claudia, the other students asking me. So I told Rebecca and Elena because I have opportunity to meet them when I was living in New Orleans. So thank you very much, everyone, to asking me to participate in this meeting. Thank you, Zaria. Thank you, Annie. Thank you, Emily. So I am disponible to other invitations. Annie have my email in the other contact. If the students want to give me email, send me email, send me ask. My Instagram it's Kelly Quirino, Kelly Quirino, Quirino. Add me on Instagram. I have many information about my class, about my political actuation. So have a good day, safe because we have the pandemic, safe because the louder hurricane, and bye.
Okay, thanks everybody. Keep your eye out for an email for some more information and some more time to connect. Have a great evening. Thanks so much. Obrigada. Tchau, gente.
Thank you.